About preaching on the steps of salvation, taking each one in turn. I get to thinking, well, there's all kinds of stuff you want to preach here at Willette 10, but I don't want to let it be said I went too long without dealing with what always you need to say. You don't need to leave any place without dealing with the basics. And therefore, in the evenings, I've already talked to y'all some about prayer and the Lord's Supper already. We'll be dealing with some of the acts of worship. But I realize I really want to go back and talk about faith again. I love preaching on faith. And right here in Hebrews chapter 11, you've got a very, very important place. Why do I want to tell you about that this morning? We, in the church, even though you belong unto God, you worry too much. Sometimes I worry a little too much. I'm not a big worrier, but I think that there's a reason why people have that worry. They don't understand even the faith that they have. They don't understand that that faith should be growing. And they allow that to ferment within them, and it bubbles up and gives rise to doubt. And it bubbles up and gives rise to worry. Even if they don't overtly have doubts about what they initially believed when they obeyed the gospel, they worry later on about the ability to live it. They don't trust and have confidence that God can help them to do so. Furthermore, they have a wrong concept of faith. They think that faith means you've got to leap out there and do something that you don't really understand. Hebrews chapter 11 takes care of that. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Let's slow down a little bit with this passage. The substance, the evidence. I want to illustrate something with you this morning. Let's take a line and sort of imaginary line and just draw it from here at the pulpit, and it's going to stretch on out, and it goes all the way out here to the first pew. Now, this line, let's let it represent how far our faith goes. My faith has reached to a certain point. Everybody would have to say that who has limitless faith. We're not supposed to believe in everything anyway, right? You're supposed to have the concept about you. I believe in things I'm supposed to believe in the sense of putting trust in them. Well, your faith goes out to a certain length. Here's the problem. If it's a good kind of faith, then that's good, but people have this also idea that let's stretch the same line and let's let it go out as far as what you know. And they say, well, I'm going to have faith that goes right there to that first pew, but as far as what I know, it only makes it here to the table. Now, we've got a little problem with that. What happens between all the problems in life that come from what you know to what you say you have faith in? You say, well, that's why I have faith in it. I mean, I don't see it, I don't sense it. Being able to sense it, touch it, smell it, see it has nothing to do with whether or not you know it. Now let me make that real plain with you again and say it again. You say, I believe it. The world takes that to mean, well, I don't know it, I just leaped out to it. No, you didn't. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. You know many things that you don't see, that you don't have sense perception of. I know George Washington was President of the United States, but I didn't live back then. I don't even have a recording from him. They couldn't make them back then. We don't even have a picture of him. And you can draw a painting of anything you want, can't you? Folks, you don't have to have a sense perception in order to know something, whether it be historical or whether it be spiritual. You say, well, I believe in what I stand for. I believe in Christianity. It's more than that. If you're going to remain a Christian, you need to understand that every bit along the way, just as you knew things up to a certain point, you also know things all the way up to the point at which you have faith. The reason why people become unfaithful is because when life shakes them out here, they didn't have a solid foundation, and they go back to whatever it is they could see. They go back to whatever it is they could touch. They go back to whatever it is they could have their senses get a hold of. And they get scared, and they don't go forward in life. And they act as if, well, I don't have faith anymore, or at least not like I used to. Why don't you? Because your faith did not rest on knowledge. Faith and knowledge go hand in hand. If you go all the way out here with your faith and you say, this is as far as it goes, my friend, you know it all the way out there. I don't just have faith that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That implies, if it's a Bible faith, I know He is the Son of God. Isn't that right? That's right. You know it. And furthermore, this lesson is about being able to say, my faith went out here to a certain point. Well, it's got to go a little further. As the days go on, it's reaching to the second pew. It's reaching to the third pew. It's reaching to the fourth pew. A mature faith moves just as your knowledge increases. People think that faith is some big mysterious thing. I want us to dispel a little bit of that. Faith is natural. You look at a little child. They'll show you how natural it is. Let me illustrate that for you right here in another way. I love these kind of illustrations because I'm a nervous kind of guy and it lets me move all over the place. All right, so I'm going to go over here this time. Now, if I stick a hand out to him and I shake Randy's hand, hey, how you doing, buddy? He's doing good. All right, see, now I shook his hand. I took his hand because out of friendship. You know, he's a friend of mine. So somebody wants to take a hand that way. Well, other people you might give a hand to for a little different reason. Brother Alvin, are you able to kind of get up and move like you used to? No, not like you used to. You did fine up there with the prayer, Brother Hugh, but you didn't maybe get up there as quick as you used to. Not quite as quick. Okay. You see, now these fellas sometimes might want a hand where it's a hand up. You know what I mean? You get a little tired and you might want a hand up. Now all of us might get that way on occasion. My point with that is that there are different ways in which we may speak of somebody extending their hand or giving them a hand. God has us think of faith like this because just as you have a hand extended for different reasons, likewise your faith is expressed in different ways. Let me continue on with it a little bit. If you say, give somebody a hand in a different sense, so you take somebody's hand. Now this might be in a romantic kind of way. No? It's worth a shot. All right, so you in a sense are taking not just a hand of friendship there, but you're taking a hand in the sense of relationship. And I wanted to illustrate it that way because I want you to look at it like this. I want to tell you exactly where I'm headed with this. We've got a childlike faith. And then your faith is tested. And then your faith matures. And that mature faith is going to help you even when the world and everything breaks down around you. Just like when you get a little older and you're like, well, I can't do anything about this, I can't do anything about that, at least not anymore, then faith will see you through that. And the Lord will give you a hand up. And when you get to where you have the hard times in life, the Lord will be there and He'll have a relationship with you where He loves you and you love Him. And He sees you through all of that as well, and you branch out and you do things in life you never thought you would have the guts to do, but you have the courage because of faith. And when you first start out with faith, this also goes along with the little hand-holding illustration. When I was a little bitty boy, I mean just a wee little McHenry. So I'm going along, and I'm like 16 months old. It's, I think, around in there. Now, I could walk. Barely. Somebody says, well, Tim, what'd you take a while about walking for? Well, some of us do, you know, that aren't really gifted with much in the way of coordination or maybe, you know, it takes us a while, some of us, to develop up top and things like that. So anyway, I could walk. But you know what Mama told me? She said, you could go anywhere. But she had to take her hand and extend it to me, and I had to grab that finger. Now, I could go anywhere if I had Mama with me. Can you walk? Yeah, he could walk then. I mean, here he is, a year and a half old, but he can walk. But he wants to grab Mama's hand. Once I had touched her hand, once I had that finger, let's go. I can take the world on, Mama. Let's go over here, let's go over there. She lets go of her hand, and what would I do? That's it. I don't want to go any further. Why? Because I had a childlike faith or trust in her. Her hand was a guiding hand, wasn't it? It wasn't the hand of friendship per se, although, of course, I love my mama. It wasn't just the handship of relationship, although everybody has a relationship with their mom and dad, things like that. But it was a hand instead that was a guide to me. And I knew if I've got this hand to guide me, I can go anywhere. I can do anything. I've got confidence. The Lord says, You start out like that. Everybody does in faith. It's called the childlike faith. Let's look at some Bible. Now, the rest of that passage there in Hebrews is also very instructive for us. So before you leave Hebrews chapter 11, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtained a good report. Everybody has always needed faith. You're not going to get anywhere with God. Look at verse 6 in that same chapter, without faith. It is impossible to please God without it. That's how the people in the past were blessed. That's how people today are going to be blessed. Anybody that lives in the future, everybody's got to have faith. And then it points out that faith is fundamental to everything you do. By faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the Word of God, so that those things which are seen were not made by those things which do appear. Now, does that mean I don't know that God made it? I just have faith? Of course not. You know that God made everything, but you weren't there to see it, were you? You weren't there to experience it with the senses, but you know it. You know it just as sure as anything. Just as sure as I knew I could travel anywhere as long as I was holding on to Mama's hand. If you look in the Bible, I want us to deal with this childlike faith for just a moment. In the book of Matthew, in chapter 18, verses 1 through 6, the beginning part of somebody's faith, where you're holding on to Mama's hand, that is where the Lord says you've got to start. You've got to have a trusting, childlike faith, where you say, I know I can do this with the Lord's help. I know I can. At that time, the disciples, it says in Matthew 18, came to Jesus and they said, who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Jesus called a little child to them. He set him in the midst of them, and he said, assuredly I say to you, unless you have converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself as a little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me. Whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would have been better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. The issue with children is not trust. They have that 100%. I can do anything as long as I've got that guiding hand. The problem with them is that their knowledge only goes so far. They're just starting out. And so their faith, if their knowledge only goes to the table, then their faith is just, restricted there, and they can't imagine anything else. But I know where Mama's at, and I know that she's able to guide me that far. Well, when somebody's thinking about being a Christian, there's Jesus. Now, my faith's got to reach out to Him. So you're going to go over here to Jesus, and you're going to go as far as Him. And when you first become a Christian, that's all you know. I know He's the Son of God. I know He can save me from my sins. I know I've got to turn from sin and live for Him. The Lord can help me do that. I will place my trust in Him today. Now, you may not know much else about the Bible, but you know that. And you have heard the invitation of the gospel. And when it was said unto you, he that believeth and is baptized shall be saved, you said, Lord, I will do it. I place my complete trust in you. Take care of me. You may not even understand everything that you're going to learn later on about baptism. Let's face it, a lot of people in the Bible were like that. Romans chapter 6. Know ye not that so many of us, as we're baptized into Christ, were baptized into His death? Did you understand every facet of your baptism when you were baptized? No, not at all. But that doesn't mean He told the Romans to be rebaptized. It means that their faith only went so far. They trusted in the Lord. They said, Lord, you say to do it, I'm going to do it. But later on, He had to remind them of the significance of it. That when you did this, you were baptized into the death of Christ, that you might be raised to walk in a newness of life. He explained to them the full measure of it. A lot of you all may have come to Jesus Christ, but what have you done with your faith? Is it still stuck back when you were little, when you first were converted, or has it progressed since then? Do you need, like with the Apostle Paul, for them to go back and remind you of how to develop and mature your faith? A child starts out with that 100% trust. I trust in you. This is what I stand for. That's what I'm going to go with. And that's just all there is to it. I'm 100% for the Lord. A lot of adults, instead of letting their faith mature beyond that point, they simply allow themselves to wither away, and they get to where they don't have the childlike faith anymore. They lose the faith as a grain of mustard seed. And when you ask them later on, if you believe, then why do we lose people in the church? Because by the time they reach 30, 40, 50 years of age, for some reason the faith they had when they were young has left them, the childlike faith. No wonder they haven't matured in the church. No wonder they aren't revamping their work list. No wonder they haven't become, according to the talents that God gave them, everything they need to be. They've lost the childlike faith. That's the first stage. You've got to hold on to that, and then you build on it. My friends, what have you done with your childlike faith? Do you still completely trust in the Lord to say His way is best? He will guide me, and I know it's going to be all right because He's got my hand. We sing that song sometimes with the younger ones, don't we? He's got the whole world in His hand. And He does. But when you forget that you are inseparably connected to Jesus and you lose that childlike faith, then, my friends, there's nothing left for you. Matthew chapter 18, it's over. You've got to hold on to that, and then God wants you to build on that. There's a fire in a building somewhere. Your little one is caught. And you come down there below that building, and Daddy looks up, and he says, I will catch you. But that is on fire up there. The smoke is coming through there. They cannot get to you. You've got to jump out of that window. I've got you. Now that child may not jump for the fireman. They may not jump out normally regardless. They'd burn up or asphyxiate. But because the parent is down there and he says, Daddy's got you, I will get you, then you trust that they will do what they said. The wonderful thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that Jesus, He promises to us, I've got this. I've got you. I'll catch you. I'll work with you. I'll make you everything you need to be in the kingdom. But somebody turns around and says, well, you know, I could say something to my neighbor about the Lord, but I don't know how to go about it. You don't trust that God will help you? Have you prayed about it? Have you studied upon how people did that in the Bible? Have you thought that the Lord will not cause that person to have the truth hit them, and that you're not the one that has to do all the work, that God's truth is going to do the work? Just approach them with what is best for them. It'd be good if you worshiped God in a better way and more consistently and more often. It'd be good for your family. And I'd love to have you to come with me. And that would just make me so happy, and it would be good for you. If you don't know how any else to put it, then put it that way. It'd be good for us to think about Bible passages, maybe read some of them together with each other. What can it hurt? Oh, I've made up in my mind 1,000 different reasons why to express my faith and to share faith is not going to work. And yet every time I try it, I find that whatever I'd worried about just goes away. And it works out so much better than what I was afraid of. Well, that person won't be my friend anymore if I branch out with my faith. Well, I can't do that. I will fail if I branch out with my faith. You fellows maybe, oh, I've never led a prayer. Well, you do pray, don't you? Just simply express that before others. And if it ends up not being the way in which you can serve God, well, you'll never know if you don't try. Some of you ladies may wonder, well, I never could go to some of those places I've never been, whether it be a prison ministry or whatever the case may be. Have you ever tried it? Well, I've never tried to stand up and say, I will do this and help the church. What if I don't have time to do that? You will find that the Lord blesses you. He gives you everything you need to serve Him, and you never know the best way you can serve Him until you try it. God is with you. Nothing can stand in your way. You have to have that childlike, trusting faith, and then you can remove mountains. You can do anything you need to do. You've got to trust Him. God says you've got to start with that. Even before your faith is tested, you've got to have that childlike faith. Well, you move on, and you get to where your faith is tested. It says in 2 Corinthians chapter 13, 2 Corinthians 13, beginning at verse 5, examine yourselves whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not know yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you, unless you indeed are disqualified? But I trust that you know that we are not disqualified. A man can know where he stands with God. I remember listening to a gospel meeting preacher And I've heard him say this more than once, so it must have impressed him, stuck in my mind, so it did impress me, that they were doing surveys of young people. And in these surveys they did of the young people, they asked them about where they stand with God right now. Do you know that when you die, you'll be going to heaven, or are you not sure of your status, or are you lost right now? Now, people don't like to admit that they're lost, do they? And so a few admitted that they were lost, but not too many. People are very standoffish about being committal and knowing where they stand with God. Some said that they were saved. The vast majority, you know what their answer was? I don't know. They didn't know because they did not know their knowledge went as far as their faith. But you said you believe on Jesus Christ. You obeyed Him, right? Well, yeah, I did. Then how can you not know that you are saved before God? It wasn't left up to you, my friend. He that believeth and is baptized shall be saved. God said that. So why would so many of our young people say, well, but I don't know? They don't know because they don't understand faith. Because when it comes right down to it and you test their faith, then what they say they believe, well, when the rubber hits the road, I don't know that I can actually go there. I don't know that I would actually say something to somebody. I don't know that I'll actually admit it myself. I don't know that I would actually say no to drugs. I don't know that I would actually say yes to evangelism until the time arrives. And the question is, am I going to tell this person I love about my love for Jesus? Am I going to say, I don't believe in that, and I'm not going to do it? That's where it gets hard, doesn't it? I had a friend in high school. We went to a party one time. When we're at that party, that's where your faith is either going to show or it's not going to show. I knew what they were doing there, and it made me feel uncomfortable. Now, why did it make me feel uncomfortable? Because he, like me, shared faith. We knew this is not the place for a Christian to be. Not because of the place itself, it's just a house. It's because of what they were doing there. We knew it. We didn't like it. Now somebody needs to say something. I didn't like it, but I wasn't saying anything. Finally, I think it was him that spoke up first. I'm thinking about leaving. He didn't even have to ask me or tell me why he was wanting to leave. I knew why he wanted to leave because I felt the same way. Why did we feel that? Because we knew that place didn't go along with our faith. And somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to pass the test here and say, this is not something that we are enjoying. We're supposed to be at a party. It's not much of a party to me. Why do I feel so bad if it's supposed to be a party? The excitement is gone. It's led to fear before God that He'll hold me accountable for not standing up for what I know is right. We just got out of there. Just flat up left Him. Oh, well, somebody's going to be offended. Offense to man means nothing compared to offending God. Just get out of there. Flee from youthful lusts. They war against the soul. There is nothing that faith cannot give you courage to do. Faith will enable you. We flew on the plane one time, Connie and I, and that was on vacation. I didn't mind going where we went, but I don't like them planes. I don't much like heights. Y'all ever been over like Gatlinburg? They give you the free helicopter tour. You're going through the air and everything, and you get to see down there all the creeks and everything, the mountains and such. I don't even like those. I went with my family one time because they wanted to go on a helicopter tour. I don't like them. I don't like being up there. It's like it's not natural. It don't feel right. But it didn't bother my faith. It's just that it didn't feel right. But you know what? If it were just a matter of me having the fear of heights, whatever phobia that is, if that was all there was to it, then I would have probably just said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm afraid of heights. But when you add to it the fact that I knew, well, it'll be all right. Because if something happens to me, you've got to know whether or not you're ready to die and go to God. Isn't that right? No matter if you have an irrational fear. I don't care if it's of heights or of spiders or snakes or whatever. Whatever your fear is, you've got to say, wait a minute. I know it's going to be all right. Now you take that and multiply it by 10 or whatever it takes to go halfway around the world and say, I'm going to fly further than I've ever flown before into a strange place. Well, some of these guys have probably been there before, but the fact of the matter remains, you still got to have the courage to say, I'm going to do it. And most people will not have that. It's not a problem of courage per se. They would maybe square off with you and have a fight right now, maybe with a man twice his size, but he might not want to go all the way over there. It's the fear that comes from not having the confidence inside God to say, He is on my side, nothing can stand in my way, everything is going to be fine. My friend, faith gives you courage. Faith empowers you. Faith, when it is tested, shows that you truly do belong to God. Back in Hebrews chapter 11, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, he offered up Isaac, whom he had received the promises of God, you see, and he offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, in Isaac your seed shall be called. He knew that. I believe it, Lord. Therefore, when you say offer up Isaac, well, you must be going to raise him from the dead, because I believe you implicitly and completely. He concluded that God was able to raise him up, even from the dead, from which he also received him in a figurative sense. Abraham was able to have that kind of tested faith, and it served him well, and he goes down in history as the father of the faithful. Would your faith pass the test? Does it empower you to be courageous? Does it make you to where you're not worried about embarrassment from people, but instead you say, Lord, I just want to do what you say? If you've got that kind of courage that comes from faith, then my friends, you're fast on your way to having a mature faith. Mark chapter 12, beginning at verse 42. The widow with 2 mites. One poor widow came, and she threw in 2 mites that make a quadrans. And so he called his disciples to himself, and he said, Assuredly I say to you, the poor widow has put in more than all those who have given into the treasury. They of their abundance put in, but she of her poverty put in all she had, her whole livelihood. How could she do such a thing? It isn't even stated in the passage. But my friends, I say to you, it's because of faith. She not only trusted in God, but her trust in God had allowed her to say, God will take care of me. I know it. He's taking care of me every day of my life. Well, I don't have to have this. I entrust it to God. And she just gave it. What faith! Jesus saw it and He was happy. Matthew chapter 8, beginning at verse 5. Jesus had entered into Capernaum, and there a soldier, a leader of soldiers, called a centurion, came to Him, pleading with Jesus, saying, Lord, my servant is lying home, paralyzed, dreadfully tormented. Jesus said, I'll come and I'll heal him. The centurion answered, he said, Lord, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy to come under my roof. Just speak the word, just say the word, and my servant will be healed. When Jesus heard that, it says in verse 10, He marveled, and He said, Assuredly I say to you, listen to it, I have not found such great faith. That's a mature faith, ladies and gentlemen. I have not found such great faith, not even in Israel. Jesus knew it when He saw it, and heard it from this man. He trusted in the Lord implicitly. He understood Jesus is able to do what He says. And then he just entrusted it to Jesus. Lord, you just say it, and it's done. And the Lord, looking into him, knew he believed it. I have not seen such great faith, Jesus said. What a powerful statement. What a courageous and a godly type man. My friends, how many of us on the great day of judgment, if you're not ready for Jesus Christ, how many of us will look back and say, oh, I knew it. I knew I should be a Christian. But I just never got up the gumption to do it. I knew I should, but I didn't know that I could live for God. I knew I should. I mean, I'd always heard about Jesus. I knew the Bible was really from Him. It couldn't be from man. I knew it, but I could not bring myself to do it. The Lord's looking for that latter kind of person. He's looking for the person who acts on it and says that you must act on your faith. Without faith, it is impossible to please Him. But your trusting, childlike faith has to go a little bit further. It has to be able to say, you can let go, Mama. You can let go. I can walk on my own if I know that you are with me. It's more now than just the physical connection. I know that you're always there, will always be for me. I can go and branch out and do things by faith. You have to have enough faith to say, I will be a Christian no matter what anybody, friends, family, anybody thinks about it. You have to have the courage that goes along with great faith to say, Lord, you have tested me, and you have always shown yourself to be faithful. Therefore, the least I can do is live for you every single day. What can I do more in the church than I've done before? How can I express my faith in a better way than I ever have in the past? God is looking for such people. One final thing. In John chapter 20, doubting Thomas was having a conversation with Jesus. After 8 days again, His disciples were within and Thomas was with them. And then here comes Jesus. The doors were shut, and then He stood in the midst of them and He said, peace be unto you. He just appears. And then He said to Thomas, reach out here your finger. Behold my hands. Reach hither your hand. Thrust it into my side. Don't be faithless. Believe. Thomas answered Him and he said, my Lord and my God. Finally, he believed. And Jesus pointed out to him, because you have seen, you believe. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe. Do you truly believe this morning? Are you ready to place your trust in Jesus Christ to save your soul? He can do it. Are you ready to serve God? You say, oh, I can't do it. Yes, you can. There is no addiction, there is no sin that you cannot overcome inside Jesus Christ. If you believe that, then let the test of faith come upon your soul this morning, and you need to pass that test. For the good of your soul, my friend, pass it by saying, I will not sit here any longer, but I'll get up and I'll come to Jesus. I'll be a Christian. And if there's somebody here that needs the prayers of the church, and you say, oh, but I'm embarrassed, the Lord gives you the power, because He is faithful, to tell you, I'll receive you again. The second law of pardon is there. Let God release you from those sins, cleanse you again, and make you pure all over in Jesus Christ. Can we pray with you? Can we help you obey God this morning? Won't you think about that and come to Him as we stand and sing? Oh, Lord.